URC playoff pathway has been confirmed and we are set for 3 exciting weekends of knockout rugby over the next month. Munster are definitely in the box seat after their closer than expected win over Ulster meant they secured top seeding if they can keep winning over the next couple of weekends. But for Leinster, they will have to do things the hard way if they want to finally win the URC, which they haven't Munster to South African teams were introduced 2 seasons ago. Leo Cullen's men will take on Ulster this weekend. If they can beat them, a trip to Loftus Versfeld to take on the Bulls is the likely outcome. So it'll be very tough for them over the next couple of weeks, but plenty to digest on tonight's episode of the Left Wing Podcast. Will Slattery here with you. I'm delighted to be joined by Luke Fitzgerald. Luke, how are you?
Good, Will. How are you? Any nerves this week?
Yeah, very nervous now. Very, very relaxed. This will be my last podcast
and I'm not
for 2
talking
weeks.
rugby here.
Yeah, my last podcast for 2 weeks. I'm getting married on Friday, listeners, just to let you guys in on that bit of personal news. So I won't be here for the quarterfinal review show. I thought I'm safe enough to take that one off of all weekends. I wouldn't have got married on a Champions Cup final weekend. I would have missed out in the chat too much. So I timed it for the quarterfinal weekend. So yeah, last show for me. Not feeling good about it, feeling confident. Had a low-key weekend watching the rugby, kind of easing myself in. I feel like one of the Leinster star players who's been rested ahead of a big weekend.
So you're not match fit?
Yeah. I consulted with Leo Cullen on the best way to manage me ahead of the big day on Friday, and he advised me to have a quiet bank holiday weekend. So that's what I'm doing.
Let's hope your legs don't give up in the last 20 minutes like the Northampton game.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully I'm still good for the dance floor by midnight. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's enough about me. Let's get into the rugby. As I mentioned in the intro there, Munster in the box seat, heading into the playoffs, home advantage wrapped up if they can keep winning. We might touch on things chronologically and kind of build our way from Leinster, Connacht last Friday up to Munster, Ulster on Saturday, and maybe hit on a couple of talking points as we get there. So going back to last Friday night, it was, the last game in the old RDS, a last stand for a couple of Leinster stalwarts, a good few of whom you would have played with. Leinster 33, Connacht 7. Leo Cullen opted to rest kind of the majority of the frontliners after the Toulouse game, which given that went to extra time and there's a couple of knockout matches to come, I think this time, I think a lot of people will probably say fair enough. Any kind of initial thoughts on it before I get into some specifics?
No, look, it's been a great, looking forward to seeing the refurbished RDS. I was actually down there myself and Mike Ross were doing something for like kind of a corporate dinner / I don't know if it was supporters club, but there was a few there, all right. So, we're kind of sharing some of the old memories from the stadium, some of the good times, some of the bad times. But look, it was a nice evening to send off.
Was it a good place to play? Did you like playing there? Sorry to cut across you.
Yeah, I really liked playing there. Yeah, well, I was kind of explaining that the old stand really sits right over, like a good bit closer than a lot of top tier stadiums. Because obviously there's only kind of standing below it or below a good portion of it anyway, at least. So the atmosphere is really, really good. And particularly when you walk out of that tunnel, out of the changing rooms, you're right into the Leinster Supporters Club. So really nice way to start a game. And throughout, particularly like for one half of the game as a winger, you're generally, spending it over next to that stadium. And I really, really love that old stand. I think it was a great place to play. Once they got the pitch sorted out too, when we started off, it was quite heavy and, it wasn't great underfoot.
For horses.
That didn't help, but a few big horses out in the pitch as well, Will. But if you're trying to do a bit of dancing and trying to avoid those horses, it was kind of tricky when the surface wasn't as good. But look, they got a hold of that pretty early, and I think it's been a great place for Leinster to play. I think they've got a really good record there for the most part, and have won most of the kind of key games there over the years, and given the supporters a huge amount to shout about. But I also think the supporters gave, a huge boost to Leinster. I think it's become a really great place to go. I think their average attendance, look, Leinster are playing well, but their average attendance is always, I think, the top in the league, isn't it? So, or generally is at least. So I think that's a really good representation of the product they're putting out there in the RDS. So, it's time moves on. I think they were, like when I was there, I played the first year in Donnybrook, and I think Leinster probably outgrew that stadium. Even though we had an unbelievable record there, it was a really hard place for teams to go and play. But I think Leinster probably outgrown this version of the RDS, and I think it's the right time just to give it a little bit of a polish up. And I think it'll be a brilliant, like that. What they're planning looks really, really outstanding. So looking forward to getting into the new one now.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what it's like. I don't know how long it'll take. It'll obviously take at least a season is the expectation. They're hopefully going to be in there then. So I agree with you. You know, it's funny. I remember when they first started going there. It's a pity. One thing, you know, with Leinster getting more supporters and moving a lot of games to the Aviva Stadium is that they don't play many big games anymore in the RDS. Because when you would have started playing, they would have had like their big pool matches there and some Munster matches there. That it was a great atmosphere for a ground. Kind of that is the perfect size to have a real kind of nice atmosphere when a real big team comes to town. Obviously, they lost that a little bit when they get into the Aviva, but obviously they have a very good record there as well. But yeah, very intrigued to see what the new one is like when it finally opens up. So yeah, this was a bittersweet night for some Leinster fans, I'm sure, saying goodbye to the old stadium. But it was a fairly comfortable win in the end, despite Leo Cullen resting so many players. One person I want to talk to you about in particular is Jimmy O'Brien, who looks primed, I think, to have a big end of season. You know, especially with Hugo Keenan now not playing the rest of the year for Leinster or Ireland. There's a kind of a question mark at fullback for both. He's looked so. Yeah, I know the defense was quite poor for his try, and similarly against the Ospreys when he ran the length. But he looks pacey. He looks like the break. Obviously, he would have loved to have been playing, but he doesn't look like he's lost anything from the break. I think he looks really primed for a big end of season. Do you think fullback? He's played a lot of wing in his big games for Leinster, but do you expect him to be the go-to fullback for Leinster, potentially Ireland now going forward this season?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's an obvious choice, isn't it? I think the only other guy who's probably close to him, even I think, in the other provinces is probably Zebo, who we obviously know is heading off. So, I think he's the next logical choice to put in a fullback if Keenan's not there. Yeah, he was electric, wasn't he, on the weekend? I like everything about watching Jimmy O'Brien play. It looks like he's got all the skills, his nice ball handling. I mean, I know Hawkshaw looked like he looked like he picked up a kind of an injury and got back up. Like, you're really always better off staying down, because if you get back up, people think you're in the line. And if you're in the line, you got to be able to make the hit. It was a lovely little switch into the two hands by O'Brien, wasn't it? Just to throw I know it was a small little dummy. I always remember Brian O'Driscoll and Johnny Sexton talking about that little skill. They were so good at selling a pass, but just the tiniest of movements. I always kind of exaggerated and really sold it. Looks great if you, do you know what I mean? You know, the big,
the show and go.
The big massive one where you go around and it looks great when someone buys it, but the more effective one is actually just a little tiny one. I'd say anyone who's looking at the scale, watch Brian O'Driscoll and watch Johnny Sexton, really, really good. But Jimmy O'Brien, lovely version of it on the weekend. And it was a really classy finish, I thought. So it looks like he's probably the obvious choice, isn't it, for the remainder of the season? Because Keenan's obviously a big loss, but look, great to be able to bring in someone as good as Jimmy O'Brien, and doesn't really upset the apple cart in terms of, Larmour, who, he has been playing very, very well, I think, bar, obviously that big mistake in the final, but he actually has been playing brilliantly for a long time, I think. And obviously Lowe is pretty much, the immovable object on the left wing, isn't he, really? So, he's just so dangerous and brings something extra. So, those guys aren't moving, I don't think. And as I said, O'Brien is really, really nice guy to have in there,
Yeah, it was a big loss for Leinster and even for Ireland as well. Like that, we mentioned a lot in this show since the World Cup. Like that cameo, that 20-minute cameo, I think really would have put him in good stead for the Six Nations, especially with Hugo Keenan missing game time. I know Frawley deputised pretty well in some of those games, but you would have thought maybe Jimmy O'Brien would have had a crack at that too. We didn't actually talk about Hugo Keenan's decision generally to go the sevens route for the Olympics. Obviously, he played the Champions Cup final. He was in action for the sevens team over the weekend in Madrid. And now he's going to be kind of playing some build-up tournaments over the next couple of weeks. So he won't be playing for Leinster and he won't be playing for Ireland this summer as well. Like, what did you make of the decision?
Probably not a fan of it, to be honest with you, Will. I really wanted Ireland to go down and have a big crack at South Africa. And, much as Jimmy O'Brien's, a top quality player, and he is, and maybe he'll, I think he's got huge potential. Like, Keenan to me has been the best fullback in the world, probably the last 18 months, 2 years, so reliable back there, great pace, great decision making for the most part. He obviously that bad one in the final of the Heineken Cup, so that'll leave a bad taste in his mouth, I'm sure, heading off to sevens. But generally speaking, unbelievably reliable and a brilliant player. And I think he'd be missed. Like, his defensive play as well has really come on the last year and a half or so. I've been so impressed with Keenan. So look, he's obviously very confident that he can keep his place. I personally would never be giving up my jersey in the 15s game to anyone. There's lots of brilliant players out there, and all they need is a chance. You never give a guy a chance. I don't think, if you keep the foot on the throat, if you have a stranglehold in the jersey. But we'll see. It's not that long that he's given it up for. But just I'd be maybe I'm just risk averse. I wouldn't like to run the risk. I
Yeah,
don't think so. I don't know about you. What do you think, Will? Would you have gone to play sevens?
I wouldn't have. It's funny. I think I'm definitely in the minority, and I think we're in agreement on it that it clearly seems to have a massive carrot is in playing in the Olympics in the sevens game. For me, if I was a 15s international, like going to South Africa, playing the world champions in 2 tests, one of which the opener in Loftus Versfeld, you're one of the best fullbacks in the world. I would have loved to test. That would be kind of a massive card for me. Like playing in the Olympics in the sevens, having not played in a long time, the guys had already qualified. He looked a little rusty at the weekend, I must say, from what I picked up. I'm just surprised that he kind of surprised that he's putting so much stock in that. Like it is kind of a cool novelty to say you played in the Olympics, but ultimately he's the best fullback in the world or one of them. This could be a huge couple of weeks. Like Leinster haven't won a trophy in a long time. I know it's you can roll your eyes say it's only the URC, but there's an opportunity to go to Loftus Versfeld and maybe to Thomond Park. If they won that, it would be hard earned and it would be a very nice medal to have in your back pocket. And like, obviously the ideal scenario for him was to win the Champions Cup and then go off and done it having ticked that massive box. But obviously having lost that game, the end of season becomes massively important for Leinster. And one of your best players has decided to leave and do something else. Now, obviously, Dupont did the same in the Six Nations. He came back and helped Toulouse win the Champions Cup, which I'm sure assuaged a lot of supporters there. But I just think it's an interesting decision. Like, I don't hold it against him because I can see Olympics is such a big thing. But I'm just intrigued that he is putting so much stock in it, because for me, going to play sevens at the Olympics it's cool, I suppose. But for me, summer tour, South Africa, winning a big, trophy with Leinster against Munster away and the Bulls away, that would be a bigger card, I think.
100% agree with you. I don't get it at all. Like South Africa is the best place in the world to tour. It is by far the best place. It's the toughest place to play the rugby. They're also the best team in the world at the moment. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't get it, and I think Ireland, look, they're decent at sevens, I think, but I just don't know if they'll be. Look, maybe he thinks he'll make the difference, but I just don't know if they'll be.
They got a good year. Like they are in with a chance of winning a medal. To be fair, it's not as if they're going to be also rans. They have a puncher's chance of winning a medal. To be fair.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. But like you're going to have, what you're getting in the South Africa tour, and I just feel like going and winning a tour in South Africa would just be a proper feather in the cap. I think that's a real. There's very few teams have been able to do that over the years. You look at even New Zealand. Do you remember '96? They always talk about '96. Do you know what I mean? Those guys go down as absolute legends in New Zealand, and a place that's perennial winners of things. And those guys are legends over there because they got that win. So, I don't know. Yeah, it seems it's an unusual decision, but look, I suppose it's his to make. I didn't agree with Dupont doing it, and I probably don't agree with Hugo doing it. But look, you have to make these. And look, he's obviously cleared it with the powers that be, so they obviously are placing high emphasis on it too. So, just surprising, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, because you look at the All Blacks tour from 2 years ago and how much stock was put in it and how great an achievement it was and how much it was celebrated and how how big a thing it felt, like a huge deal at the time. And like this is kind of similar to that. I know it's only 2 tests instead of 3, but to go and win that would be a massive. Like, would you rather win a Test series in South Africa or come home with maybe a bronze medal? I don't know. I think winning in South Africa would be a bigger achievement, but he obviously he's made his decision, and it'll be interesting to see who gets the opportunities with Leinster and Ireland over the next few weeks. Just to go back to the Connacht game. Sam Prendergast performance, wonder what you made of it. Part of me was wondering if Leo Cullen was just kind of trolling people by picking him against Connacht, given that was like it was being mooted that the loan deal might go ahead. It appears that that's kind of cooled off, according to Pete Wilkins, anyway. But how do you think he played, and how do you think he set rugby wise? Obviously, the point you made about him needing the gym work, I think, is well made. He needs to fill out a bit, but just in terms of how he played at the weekend, what did you make of it?
Yeah, nice skills, wasn't it? I mean, some lovely decision making at different times, and the ball handling skills are there for everyone to see. So he's got that playmaking ability. The key thing for him is going to be, not whether you can do it against Connacht, who are, fighting for something, I suppose. They were possibly fighting for that kind of 8th spot, wasn't it, really? But I think it was nearly beyond them anyway. I thought, they looked like once the tries had gone in, is that a really good barometer of where you're at? I'm not 100% sure. Like, that was a very soft, like the Jimmy O'Brien try was class, but it was a little soft, even to let them just run that out and throw, and for Prendergast to throw, like, you had so much time to throw that ball over the top. It was pretty horrendous defending, but he still was good, I thought. Some lovely interplay. For the Frawley try, I really liked that ball out the back, and the short one to the short ball to Conan was a lovely, lovely, lovely bit of play. Now, really nice. Like, obviously, the really lovely bit is Conan going through with the handoff and then getting the two hands on the ball and getting a beautiful offload to Frawley is probably the standout. But I just thought, there was lots of periods in the game where I just thought Prendergast showed some lovely touches, I thought. So, look, we can see there's a player there, but it's always difficult to make the transition. So we see how he develops over the next couple of years. And, the key thing for him is that, can he get more game time? Because he's going to need it against the better teams. Well, it's not, this time of the year against Connacht, as I said, they had a puncher's chance. But once, as I said, the tries went in, it was really difficult to gauge, where he's actually at. And it nearly convinced me that it would have been a better move to go down to Connacht, because I just thought, well, he'll definitely get some game time there, and that's what he really, really needs. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on that one, Will. I thought he was good, though. Like, you can see he's a good player, can't you?
Yeah, it's just playmaking and his passing that really is kind of the standout thing when you watch him play. I think that's kind of his main strength. But yeah, it's funny. Like, part of me, I do agree with you that game time is paramount for him. But I just knew he was never going to go, I just knew like Leo Cullen was going to fight tooth and nail to keep him. Like, why would you want one of the best prospects, in European rugby for that age going down the road, play somewhere else? And I know the game time argument is definitely valid, but if you're just putting yourself in Leo Cullen's shoes, like he's never going to want to relinquish that opportunity. Like, he was speaking after the game about it, and he was saying that basically you kind of need these players in case you need them, basically. Like, in case there's a scenario that arises where there's injuries and various people aren't fit and you have to go deeper into your reserves, and he doesn't want to pass up any of these guys in case they're required. So I just don't see it
I'm sure
happening.
there's a bit of a. Do you think there's like a control element to it as well? Because, like, let's face it, like, he's probably not an absolute like nailed on to take game time off Carty, but certainly not if JJ's back. Now obviously he's got a bad injury, but um, part of his thinking could be that, well, he's not nailed on to play, and is he going to get better training down in Connacht? He probably doesn't think so. So that might form part of the kind of decision making around it as well. Will.
Well, definitely, like, he's going to be working with, Jacques Aber, Tyler Blayendal is coming in from the Hurricanes, who's very highly regarded. Like, and Connacht this season have had a tough season, and there's pressure on that coaching staff next season. And obviously, with Andy Friend gone, there is a question mark about, the quality of the coaching staff that Andy Friend had versus what maybe has been there this year. So I think it's a valid argument as well. I know you always say it isn't by training that you're going to get, a lot better, but at the same time, the intellectual kind of, I suppose, the rugby intellect you're learning from at Leinster with Neen Aber and the other guys I mentioned, for a young player, like, that's the best. There's probably not a young player anywhere in club rugby getting that kind of guidance at that age and with that expertise, I would have said.
No, definitely value. Yeah, no. Like, there's really valuable thing to be having, like, close contact and good conversations, particularly as the 10. You'll get a good bit of exposure to those guys. You'd imagine, a lot. It won't just be in fits and starts. Like, they have to talk to their 10s quite a bit to, be implementing their game plan. So, yeah, you'd like to think by rubbing shoulders with them, you'll definitely, you'll definitely learn and come on as a player. But there does come a point where you do have to play kind of 10 or 15 games a season, and you can't just be playing the worst teams. You've got to be playing the better teams, So, and the key part is you can't just be playing those games if there is, 4 guys injured ahead of you, that kind of way. It has to be, well, I'm sitting on the bench here every week, or, you just have to have a chance. I think that's only personal preference as a player. I could be wrong on that. And Leinster, in fairness, have done very well at well, I think, bringing on some of the talent they have and getting them from the academy into top class professionals. But, have they developed enough? I don't know. I feel like there's probably still a few players that, have dwindled away a little bit and never really kicked on from, like what looked like massive potential. They've ended up having to go to other provinces, but they've always done it a little bit too late. So Leinster have kind of hung on, or the players hung on just a little bit too long, I think. So, yeah, I just hope that's not the scenario that's going to break out with Prendergast.
Well, yeah, like, where is the game time going to come from? Like, I know I'm kind of talking to both sides of my mouth, but I'd like to be. I just said I didn't think the move would happen. Not that I didn't think it should. Like, they have 4 out halves. I know Frawley doesn't really play there that much, but it's hard to see where his game time will come from in big games. And even if you move away from out half, look at James Culhane, say a number 8 from the the 20s team of 2022 that won the Grand Slam. I think he was the captain or one of the key men anyway, and he was being touted as a guy for the future. And he has played for Leinster, but there's so many back rows there that it's just like, where's his game time going to come from? Like, as in, he's the guy who was probably the best player on that Grand Slam winning team, and he's only gotten to play a couple of URC matches, and there's no prospect in the near future. So Jack Conan can't even get in the starting team. So I don't see what chance.
He was unbelievable on the weekend, wasn't he? God,
he picked up a
he's been
knockout,
playing
unfortunately, I think. So I hopefully, for his sake, it's not too serious. Because again, every time he's played, I know it was a good game for him because the defense was pretty porous, but it made him look very good. Like picking it off the back of a scrum and was running over.
That hasn't happened in years. Yeah, I haven't
That's
seen
an
one of them in a long time.
under-13s try, like.
Yeah, no, it was a little bit, wasn't it? Kind of end up carrying a couple of guys over the line. But God, like Conan has been on fire every time I've seen him this year, hasn't he? I've been really, really impressed with him. And he must be mentally very, very strong to be able to continue to go on with the disappointment week on week, knowing that he's had a brilliant game. You know what I mean? He must be in a good place, I'd say. In terms of where he is mentally. So yeah, hopefully he can
A
finish
lot
the
of
season strong.
meditation, I'm sure. Every time the team is named, he's just like, count to 10.
Like a tea kettle, yeah. I don't know, yeah, and I think I wonder what the dialogue is between him and Leo. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you say to someone like Conan. Like, how do you keep him out of the team every week when it looks to me like I thought Doris was unbelievable in the final, but like Conan, like how did I don't know. I just don't know what the basis was for not picking Conan before the final. Like that must have been like, if you look back at all the clips, I thought Conan has been playing better. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, that's been kind of one of the things we've both been in agreement on for the last maybe 6 or 7 weeks is the form of Jack Conan, and kind of wondering what would he need to do to actually get ahead of Caelan Doris in the starting team. It seems to be like Doris has to play, and it's maybe a question of whether they put him at 6 and put Conan at 8. I think maybe it was Baird he was almost competing against potentially.
Possibly. Well, I mean, look at that. I'm not sure Baird has he had an unbelievable end to the season. I'm not 100% that he has.
Yeah.
He's been strong. I think he gives you what he gives you in the line out. I think they really like, and probably I wouldn't say he's heavier than Conan, but he might be a little bit heavier than Conan. He's a big man, in fairness, Baird. But look, certainly like difficult conversations, about that Leinster back row. It must be very difficult week to week. Like even picking. I had an interesting conversation with someone today about Connors, like picking him for the final. But he hadn't played a game. I don't think he'd started a game for Leinster for 4 weeks before the final. Did you?
La Rochelle, La Rochelle, I think, was his previous start. Yeah, La Rochelle was the last game.
Isn't that kind of nearly setting someone up to fail a little bit, isn't it? I think.
Well, look,
that was the version. I was talking to an old Leinster player, still active, still actually playing, but met him in the gym today. No, you won't be able to guess it. He's actually a really, really good fella, but he was kind of saying, like, it really, like, Josh was so good when he came off the bench. It kind of nearly was like, he just felt it was like really harsh on Connors, who's actually been playing brilliantly. He said, like, he hadn't played in 4 weeks. So, like, what we expecting him to produce in the final? Do you know, that kind of way? Like, very, very unusual.
Yeah. Well, we had the discussion before the team was named, and I felt like that selection was just really going. They had a preconceived notion of what the match might look like, and they picked Connors to fit that notion, which was like Toulouse having a lot of dominant ball carriers and Connors needing to chop them. But what ultimately happened was that Leinster in the first half had all the ball basically by the first 5 or 6 minutes, and like Connors' game isn't really suited as much to that. Like Van der Fleer is great at getting on the ball, injecting pace and energy and dynamism, and I feel like that. He was the guy who should have started that game. So I thought before the game selecting Connors was kind of setting your stall out as kind of,
defensive. I remember you said it was kind of a defensive selection. Yeah. Do you know what I thought was interesting though? Was that, like, I hadn't thought of the angle of, like, he was like, he kind of set him up to fail a little bit, This is a guy now I'd really respect. A really kind of hard worker, would have sat in a lot of benches for Leinster and that. And would have headed off to the UK. So, like, really, like, good guy, still playing, like, and
really trying to guess who this guy is now.
You can guess after. I'll tell you after. But, like, it just was really interesting to hear him say that, because I was like, he's really pro Leinster still, but he was kind of going, geez, like, he just thought that was kind of mad, and he was kind of looking back and saying, yeah, geez, it's funny, like, he was talking to some of them when they were saying that they were kind of exhausted or whatever, and he was like, you've played you play one game every 3 weeks or whatever. It's very different to like playing in different leagues in France or the UK, that kind of way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, look, it's that the Leinster back row, and to come back to it, is a really interesting discussion. And for a young player like Culhan, I think it's a really interesting point you make, because there's been lots of really good players who've left the club, like like Jordy Murphy and these guys. Well, not lots, but a few of them, and yeah, I just don't know how you'd be. How do you keep everyone happy? That's the biggest question. It must be a really hard job for Leo Cullen to keep everyone happy. Do you think? Like, he must be doing
Yeah.
a good job for it, because people hang around.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's one of the things that he has gotten praised for. Obviously, in the last couple of years, he's gotten a bit of stick for how he's managed the team selections. But to keep all those guys in the squad year after year, to give them that cushion that ordinarily, not this year anyway, but ordinarily they were able to get quite high seedings in the league when not using their frontliners the whole pile. This year, obviously, it wasn't successful. Now they have potentially a very difficult route if they want to win the URC. But it's definitely been one of the areas where being able to maintain that balance. Or yeah, again, you'd love to know the conversations he has with people like Scott Penny, Max Deegan, James Culhane, Sam Prendergast. Like he's obviously telling them what they want to hear to a degree, in the sense that maybe he's just saying, oh, next year is your year. But like, obviously, like at the end of the day, like they're well compensated to a degree as well. So they're probably happy to be living where they're from. But at the same time, Leo Cullen is obviously good at spinning a narrative or creating a picture for them of, you're just one break away. But I don't know. Yeah, who knows? You'd know better than I do what he might be saying, I suppose.
No, he's a very he can be quite straightforward and blunt at times. You know what I mean? Like he deliver fairly tough news. He's a the thing about Leo is that he's a guy you'd want to play for. He's such a good personality, tough as nails, but you would want to play for him. So like, there's obviously something that he's saying that's keeping the guys around, because for love nor money, I can't figure it out, because I just feel like there's lots of people there who I'm going like, what? How is your situation improved by sitting on the bench here every week, or like sitting, or just working out in the gym? It seems insane to me, particularly when I look. You don't have to give up your Irish chances, I don't think, to go to a good situation. Like, you know what I mean? You could go up to Ulster now, and it looks like they've kind of turned things around. Hopefully, certainly, I know they'll be disappointed with how they finished the game against Munster, but there was lots of good stuff to talk about, and they've been way better. I don't think many teams will be you know, I don't think many teams would have been happy seeing them in the playoff matches. I'm sure Leinster will kind of relish the opportunity at home to maybe set a few things right from a pretty tough year against them. But no one else, I don't think, would have want to play at Ulster. And I just think there's opportunities there. Like, I think for Prendergast, I would have thought the more obvious move would have been to go in and sit behind Crowley. Like, that would have been an ideal scenario for him, I would have thought, because he'll get those 20, 30 minutes every week, possibly, if they're trying to kind of manage Crowley, if the team is going well and they're winning the games. But also, Crowley's going to be away for a good portion of the year. So you're kind of guaranteed nearly kind of 5 to 10 good games. But you're sitting in squads every week versus sitting kind of third or fourth choice in Leinster. So, like Billy Burns, to my mind, like his time is past in an Irish jersey. I don't think he ever gets back in.
The chances of Leo Cullen letting Sam Prendergast go to Munster, whatever about going to Connacht, I definitely don't think a player going to Munster would
get well
be
trained there. It's in a team that's playing well. Like,
yeah. No, it makes sense. Like, that makes sense.
That one makes way more sense to me, to loan, like, because you're only loaning him down there,
Yeah. Just to finish up with the Leinster Connacht game, like, Connacht season, really petered out in the end. The defense has been an issue all season. Again, some very soft tries against Leinster. Like, how do you reflect on their year as a whole? Like, and I suppose budget-wise, it looks like their squad is going to be probably weaker next year than it was this year. I know a few guys have already been confirmed as leaving. It's like the Andy Friend era looks pretty much done and gone. I know, obviously, Mac Hansen's injury. He's been injured since January 1st, which is a killer. Like, he's one of the key guys. But, like, how do you reflect on that year?
Oh, look, difficult, and I think obviously the priority has been the stadium, and they've obviously, I think that's probably right. So there's always going to be a little bit of pain around that, particularly when they're kind of, those budget constraints exist for Connacht every year, and they've kind of worked some magic with some great signings here and there. But they've also had a bit of bad luck this year, as you mentioned, like Mac Hansen, but also Cordero. That was really like unlucky for that to have happened before he's even laced up the boots in a match for you was very disappointing. And Bundy Keys kind of been missing for them here and there as well. Hasn't been available. That's always a big challenge for them. And Beelum is a big important player for that pack as well. So, like, if without those guys, they look like a very different team, I think. And they didn't have those guys for the vast majority of the season, combined with kind of some new faces coming into the coaching staff. So there was a lot of things going on this year, I think, that probably didn't really work in Connacht's favor. And I think that's probably what we saw, Will. But like, as you said, it probably doesn't look like like where the green shoots for next year is probably what I'd be thinking, and would worry me a little bit, because I think they've done some brilliant work over the last couple of years. You mentioned Friend, but the Friend era was very, very productive, and they had some big wins over that period. Yeah, no, a little bit worried for them. I think the defensive stuff, I think they'll be happy the season's over now. They just get to move on, go out, go off on their holidays, regather themselves, and refocus for next year. I'm sure Scott Fardy will do a fairly ruthless enough job of looking back at the season and saying, well, look, lad, this isn't good enough, and probably nice to get them into a preseason and get a bit of focus on that area. Like, I think they need to be stingy defensively. They actually put themselves in some really good positions, particularly at the start of the year. The Leinster one probably screams out. The Ulster one probably screams out too. Of kind of chances kind of given away at kind of crucial moments in the game. The defense just didn't hold up and allow them to have some kind of big wins, and they never really got to get any momentum at that stage, I think, or in the early stages of the year. And look, that's how the rest of the season transpired. And when they get someone like Mac Hansen, who's a huge player for them, and that injury return seemed to be extended out kind of constantly over the last couple of weeks, didn't it? So I think it's probably right that if they were a little bit worried about it, that they didn't chance him for the end of the season. He gets a good preseason under his belt, and I don't think he should go on that South Africa tour. And just let him recuperate, let him get that shoulder right, because he's a big player for Ireland too, isn't he?
That's the last place he should go, with his shoulder that's on the mend. I
I know,
like
yeah.
I got back his boat is retired anyway. That's I'm thinking of that.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the Leinster game. Like, that was a real punch in the gut. Like, I just saw actually on Twitter earlier, Kieran Frawley won like Leinster Try of the Year, their awards for the try, and it's reminded me of like the last play of the game. It looked like the game was dead and buried from a Leinster perspective, and somehow they snatched it. And yeah, that was just, you're right. Like, any kind of chance to build momentum, like a win like that, a win over Leinster would have been their first one in a couple of years. I think that would have been a nice momentum boost at that stage of the year. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the green shoots, a couple of young players, Matthew Devine, the scrum half,
he looks good. He looks good.
Yeah, looks promising. They have Hugh Gavin, the under-20 centre, who's got onto a senior contract next year. He looks like a real prospect, especially as Bundyaki's maybe not as available as much and is kind of coming towards maybe the tail end of his career. Hugh Gavin looks like a real prospect, big, powerful ball carrier. So those guys hopefully can kick on next year. But yeah, it looks like they're in the market for an out half, and Sam Prendergast probably won't be, unfortunately, going from their perspective. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get someone in with JJ Hanrahan getting that unfortunate injury a couple of weeks ago. We might move on to Munster Ulster then. Ended up being a really exciting, good game. I know, as you mentioned about Ulster earlier, I know they didn't get the win, but another sign of competitiveness. And I agree. I think that Leinster-Ulster game could be really, really good at the Aviva this weekend if Ulster can pitch up the way they have against Leinster and against Munster. But ultimately, Munster got the job done. They didn't play great for long periods. They unleashed their own little bomb squad in 50 minutes and kind of outscored Ulster, I think, by 14 from then till the end. Like, what jumped out to you about that match?
Thought it was kind of sloppy throughout. I think like Munster obviously I think they were fairly lucky to keep Snyman on the pitch at the start of the game. I'm not sure what the interpretation was on that one. I didn't think it was nasty. It was just an awkward collision, I think. But I think by the rules of the laws of the game, I'm just not sure on that interpretation of that. I don't know what your thoughts are, but
it was a yellow card.
I thought it was a yellow too. Yeah.
And then he scored a try like 2 minutes later.
Unbelievable try. He must have some set of paws on him to be able to
Michael
get that
Jordan
out.
Space Jam-esque is what I was thinking when he just reaches out.
Yeah, wasn't it actually? Yeah. No, it was impressive, wasn't it? And he was good all the way through the game. Well, for the most parts of the game anyway, he was pretty good, wasn't he? Like, he's so strong and awkward in the tackle, like really difficult to move in rucks too. But that offloading ability, like once Leinster get to utilize that correctly and figure him out, like he's a real handful, isn't he? And I think lots of opportunities will open up around him. But yeah, like, he is such an important player for them, Will, I think, isn't he? Seems to be a real focal point for them. But look, I thought it was a great game. I thought it was kind of some sloppy kicking from both sides at the start, some sloppy defense at different points as well. But overall, I thought there was, it was a very entertaining game, and there were some lovely skills throughout on show, I thought, at different points. Was it the second or third Munster? I can't remember. I think it was the third Munster try. There was some unbelievable ball handling. It was Nash one at the end. I think there was some lovely interplay. Crowley had some classy touches in it, and then I just thought their rucking was really good. Like once Munster punched the hole, I can't remember who Crowley put through the hole, but it was a lovely, lovely pass. And then obviously, he did a bit of dancing himself afterwards. Got dragged down close enough to the Munster line. I think he got an awful lot away, actually. Sorry, but the rucking was really good. And then I think it was Casey threw the pass over the top. Really, really lovely finish to Nash, I thought. And uh, they look good. They look really good. They look tough. When the going got tough, they really found another gear, didn't they? And I thought the Thomond crowd, like, what the lasting impression I got was, obviously the maul try is obviously the key one, to kind of to get them ahead in the game, or to get their noses ahead. But did you hear the roar of the crowd when they had the maul set? I was kind of like, what I was thinking was, Jesus, like, if they have a team back there in the latter stages of the playoffs in a qualifying game and it's close, they'll be hard to beat. You could see that roar of the crowd, the energy in the stadium. Like, they'll be hard to break down defensively, you'd think. There'll be bodies on the line. There'll be guys dying for the jersey there. And even if they're going for a try, like, they're quite hard to stop in the 22. I think they're pretty ruthless when they get in there, aren't they? I don't know what your impression of Munster was, but they seem to be hard to stop when they're close to the line,
Yeah, well, on the home advantage piece, I 100% agree. Like, I remember we had a show just before the URC kind of resumed with the last three matches, and I said I looked at the fixture list. It was Connacht home, Edinburgh away, Ulster at home, and I said that they should be targeting 15 points out of 15 and be real ruthless here to get that top seeding, and they got 15 out of 15, and now they have the top seeding. Like, they have Ospreys at home on Friday, which fair play to the Ospreys for squeaking in at the end. I'd give them credit for that, but you'd presume Munster will put them away. Then they're looking at Glasgow or the Stormers at home the following week, another winnable game. And then, hopefully we have a Munster Leinster final. That's the one we all want. But even if it's not, like, the Bulls maybe coming to town or whoever it might be, like, Munster will be very, very hard to beat in Thomond Park the way they're playing at the moment.
Oh, I completely agree. I don't think anyone will want to play against them. They're obviously top of the league for a reason. Did I hear some stat? You probably know this. Sounded to me like they had, was it 39 of the last 40 available points that they'd won. So obviously
Yeah.
that's whatever, only one non-bonus point out of the last 8
Yeah,
games.
I don't think
Pretty
they
impressive.
have they haven't lost in the league, I don't think, since New Year's Day. That Mac Hansen game when Mac Hansen got injured, Connacht, beat them in the sports grounds on New Year's Day. I think they've won every league match since then. Obviously, they had the European defeat, and in some ways, like, getting knocked out early. Like, if you don't have a strong enough squad to compete in two fronts, it's almost no harm to get to kind of narrow the focus. You get those little built-in break weeks with the Champions Cup final and the Champions Cup semi-final, and they look fresh. They've gotten guys back now. Unfortunately, like, there was an injury update today. It looks like Thomas Ahern might be out for the remainder of their season potentially.
Oh,
Joey,
that's a killer. I didn't see that. I missed that.
yeah. It said a couple of weeks, so the season's only 3 weeks left. So I'm going to say he's probably touch and go to play again. Joey Carberry's missing this weekend. Alex Nankerville's missing this weekend. Frisch, I think, is back, so it's kind of some positive, some negative news. But you'd think they could get over the Ospreys with, if they have a couple of injuries. But you really want your full squad for the following week, Glasgow or the Stormers, I think. But
I think they'll be hoping for Glasgow. Would you? I'd be hoping for
yeah,
Glasgow. Like, they're
I
tough.
think so as
Glasgow
well.
are tough, but I
Yeah.
think when it comes to knockout rugby, I think I'd rather Glasgow than Stormers. I think.
Yeah,
What
I
about
think you
you?
know what you get from Glasgow, don't you? Like, you're a good team, they can play ball,
With the
but
familiarity, yeah,
yeah,
I
the
agree.
Stormers
Yeah.
bring that kind of not unpredictability necessarily, but just they do have the ability to raise their game to a physical place that Glasgow probably couldn't go to.
The
But
pack, it's in the pack, Will, I
yeah,
think, isn't it? And they have the few flyers at the back as well. But it's the pack that would worry you, because you hear me say this a lot on the podcast, Will, but when it comes to knockout rugby, the South African teams have a huge advantage in that they generally have a few absolute, like, flyers on the wings. So any kind of mistake, it could be a try from 60. But they also have that ability to play a fairly negative game plan generally if they want to. Like, Millie at the scrum, Millie at line out and maul, just with the sheer size of their packs and the strength. And that's always a nice place to be able to go, because it doesn't really require a massive amount of thinking, you know what I mean? Which is really hard to do. You see Leinster every year in the final. Like, it's very difficult to play that kind of high tempo game in a final with lots of skills and the kind of all court game that Leinster are known for. That's a really difficult thing to deliver in a final, I think. I think New Zealand, even at times over they've had some unbelievable teams at different stages in competitions, but it's difficult to do that. Whereas South Africa, I think, have a great record at the competition, at, like, say, World Cup and things like that, because have that ability in knockout rugby to squeeze you out of the game. It's a lovely thing to have, I think. So I agree. I think that'll be the worry coming up against South Africa. It'd be the worry going into Loftus for me with Leinster.
yeah. I wanted to talk to you about one Munster player in particular and get your opinion on him, given a fellow winger like Calvin Nash. For me, is someone who's taking the Six Nations experience and looks so much more confident and assured because of it. He looks like he's just risen in stature, and I think he's playing great rugby. I expect him to have a great summer down in the on the high veld. When Ireland go back down there, like, what have you made of his development, since the Six Nations, and how good do you think he's playing at the moment?
Yeah, look, really pleased for him. Apparently he's a guy that works really hard. He's apparently in unbelievable shape. So they're always guys you like to hear doing well. And yeah, I like him. I think he's kind of a no frills. I think, you like very good in attack, very dangerous, got that nice right foot step. And he's fairly clinical. I think what I really liked about him is that I think what I noticed that he I think the error count really has gone down. He looks like an international player now. I always think that's the big difference between, like, kind of guys who are interpros and guys who are internationals, is that those silly errors, those kind of small mistakes that you can get from a kind of an interpro player, you don't really get them from internationals ever. He just looks very polished, very complete player, very comfortable where his game is at. And he's a guy that Munster can really rely on, so yeah, pleased for him. I thought Daly was good too, by the way, on the wing. I thought he had a good game, some lovely tackles as well. Nice player, but like Nash has really gone to a new level. I think you're right. I'm glad you asked me about him, because you kind of like speaking about guys like that, don't you? The guys who are kind of hard workers and who've maybe come, maybe not as well renowned or as well as spoken about as much maybe as some other players. And there's been lots of talk about Ireland not really producing many natural kind of outside backs. But I think we've seen on particularly this weekend with Jimmy O'Brien and himself, like those two guys are pretty snazzy and very, very dangerous with ball in hand and very quick. So still have the ability to produce that talent there. And those guys are I think, good evidence of that.
Yeah, there's a good chance that Bubby in the Ireland back three potentially come that first game in Loftus Versfeld, which is funny if Leinster do end up playing in Loftus Versfeld in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously, not taking this weekend. I'm not box ticking that for them against Ulster. It'll be a good game. But if they do end up playing the Bulls in Loftus, the Ireland players will be back again 2 or 3 weeks later after that to play them again in the first time. So it would actually be a great kind of like reconnaissance mission almost for Ireland to get that experience in Loftus Versfeld before they play them, in the summer tour.
Yeah, like it's an unbelievable stadium, Will, and I think playing at on the high veld in a playoff game, it won't be the same as South Africa. But look, you'll have some parts that you can lean on in a couple of weeks' time when you go down to South Africa. So yeah, whether it's Ulster or Leinster that go down there, I think there's definitely things that some of the players who'll be involved in that tour will take from it. So yeah, it's such an exciting place to go and play rugby. I can't explain to you how much fun it is, Will. It's really great. A rugby lover such as yourself now would absolutely love to head down there for a couple of weeks to watch against, but also to play. It's a brilliant place to go and play a rugby.
I did look at going to the summer tour this year as a fan, but it was just too close to my wedding. I just I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could, like,
honeymoon.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be a hard sell now to go. Do you want to go on
But
safari?
it's very cheap.
Safaris in Pretoria and Durban in the stadium. It's actually not on like kind of a safari land.
Okay, yeah. Well, I look, there's a conversation to be had.
It would have been a tough sell, unfortunately. But yeah, speaking of Ulster, as I said, I'm really looking forward to the game of the Aviva on Saturday. And Richie Murphy, again, he spoke after the game saying how proud he was of the performance, annoyed they didn't get the win. But it was another kind of steadying of the ship weekend for me. Like they were well in that game for long periods. They looked like the better team. Couple of errors, hitting the post, that penalty to go 13 up, those small little moments, didn't go their way. But ultimately, I think
penalty. I didn't think that was a penalty at the end for Munster. Did you? I thought Frank got that decision wrong. Like, I know it's on the edge, but I thought he looked like he had his hands on that ball. I didn't think that the last. Look, great to see Crowley knocking that one over under pressure. I thought, but I thought Frank got that decision wrong. I thought that was a clear Ulster penalty. I thought they could be a little bit miffed about that one. And look, it wasn't within kickable range, but they might have been kicking to, the Munster 22. So they would have been in range ish. So yeah, I agree. I thought there was loads of. I agree with Richie's assessment. I thought there was loads to be positive about. Another move in the right direction. Thomond is still a difficult place to go and produce an 80-minute performance. And I still think Ulster's bench is probably, not as strong. Like, they weren't able to bring on a crew to say, well, like, let's shore up things or let's go on the attack again. Whereas, Munster could do that. So I think that's still a point of difference with them when they come against the top teams. But God, their first 15 will be a challenge for everyone, provided their front row can kind of keep them can keep up. I think if you look at what I thought Timoney was outstanding throughout the game. I thought he was really, really good. I think there was loads for them to be positive about, Will. And I think they'll be a threat. Like, beating Leinster twice this year is, I think that's that would give anyone confidence, wouldn't it? Like, even if they're not playing the front liners, I certainly would, like myself, think, well, look, they're still playing the same style of play as the front liners, even if it's not them. So we know what we can produce against them. And one thing I would say about what I saw on the weekend was, in the RDS, they picked Leinster apart on a pretty nasty night, with some lovely interplay between the forwards. And at the start of the game in the first half, I don't know if you remember, there was some lovely interplay from the Ulster forwards, and they're going to need to do those kind of things against that Leinster defence. I thought they found ways to pick it apart quite well, albeit it was early in Leinster's development. But they had some lovely chips, if you remember, in that
Yeah, the
game. They had
chip.
some lovely
Yeah,
passes
Billy
inside.
Burns got man of the match with a couple of nice kicks. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but they had some other ones too, Will. Do you remember they kind of had
Mm.
some set plays and stuff? Like, I was impressed with them. I think it was, the interplay was what impressed me the most. They kind of figured out a way to get, little 1 yard gains against that Leinster defense in tight, which lots of teams, even Toulouse, really struggle to do. So yeah, I don't think they'll be fearing it. I think they'll be excited by the challenge, and they'll have nothing to lose going down to the Aviva, I don't think.
And in terms of next season, I saw, they signed the Hurricanes 22-year-old at half, Aidan Morgan, for next year, Irish qualified. I think that's a great bit of business. Like, he hasn't been starting for them this year. He's been kind of in and around the team, played maybe like 6, 7 times for them. But from what I've seen, he does look good. And like, I actually think he
You
could
saw the
run away.
highlights too.
Huh?
I did too. I look good, didn't he? Yeah.
No, he does. Like, no, and to be fair, I had seen him play for the Hurricanes this year. I've watched a decent amount of Hurricanes rugby. Like, he's a good signing. Like, is it for a team that, like, Billy Burns is leaving? They have Jake Flannery, and they're going to have Aidan Morgan. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Aidan Morgan, given that Jack Crowley is the number one and there isn't an L on number two, would not surprise me if Aidan Morgan by the end of the next season was pushing to be included in Ireland squads and potentially getting captain. Maybe the summer tour next year. Obviously, he hasn't played a minute in Irish rugby yet, but there's opportunities there for an out half to come in, because the Leinster out half situation is almost built to not let one of them shine the way it's been managed at the moment. So if Aidan Morgan comes in, is starting week in, week out for Ulster, and they all of a sudden have a little bit of a renaissance, wouldn't be surprised if he ended up playing for Ireland in the near future.
I completely 100% agree with that. I think you're dead right. And I think also that's one of the best summations of the Leinster at half situation that I've heard from anyone. It's not built to let anyone shine. Like, one of those people should be shining up, I think, up in Ulster, but that slot is taken now, So that's what happens. People move on, and great to see Richie. Looks like, I'm sure he would have been involved in some of those conversations, and maybe they've been ongoing before he got there, but it's a bit of a vote of confidence in him, I think, isn't it? That someone would
But
come
the
up and
guy's
say, "Yeah, I'd
22.
like to
Like,
work with that
he's
coach."
coming at 22. Aidan Morgan. It's not as if he's like a journeyman out half. Like, he's young in his development, and they've been able to convince him, that his future lies in. It's an attractive move, because obviously being Irish qualified means he has a pathway to international rugby pretty quickly. Like.
I agree, and like, I think your point about Culhan earlier on, I think, is a big one as well. Like I wonder at what point Richie's able to have conversations with these guys. Like, he must have a really, really good relationships with them. So we talked about when Richie got appointed that might be something that would be really good, particularly with Ulster having, some challenges financially as well. Would something like that be really, really valuable to them, and they could get some guys at pretty probably knockdown prices early in their careers and give them a chance to shine, because otherwise they're just going to be lifting weights in Leinster. It's great listening to the best coaches in the world, but you're only going to be listening to them. You're never going to be implementing them in a game. So yeah, I don't know. I think he could be the perfect guy for Ulster. And look, getting a young guy in from New Zealand is, I think, a big vote of confidence also in what he's doing, or how he's able to sell the project to the club. But also, I think, you could marry that with some really young Irish talent too that's not being able to shine. So yeah, I agree. I think there's really, really positive. I hope they put in a big performance next week. I really hope it's a tight one in the Aviva. The last thing you'd want to see is some kind of blowout loss, because that wouldn't undo it, because I think there's definitely been a bit of a recovery, a bit of resurgence the last couple of weeks, Will. But you want to bookend it, even if they don't go on, because Leinster will be hot favourites, I think, for it.
Yeah.
Particularly with no Henderson around and things like that. But you just want to make sure they have a good showing, I think, at a minimum. And I think internally they'll be confident that they'll have a few things up their sleeves that can cause Leinster a little bit of trouble and maybe upset them a little bit, and then let maybe Leinster get nervous, So we wait and see. And I'm actually really excited to see that match. I think it probably is the pick of the matches, isn't it, for this round?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I do think, given Leinster have lost them twice, that the frontliners haven't played since the Champions Cup final, they will be hurting and will be wanting to put on a bit of a show. Like, I don't think, I think, if even if Ulster do lose, and it's a reasonably, maybe 10 15-pointer. I don't think it detracts from the steadying of the ship that's gone on. And as we mentioned there, the various kind of things for Ulster supporters to get excited about next year. I think next year could be a really interesting season for them. Like, he came in, he got them back into the Champions Cup, he got them into the playoffs. He said after the game at the weekend, it's kind of a free shot against Leinster. Their reward is a trip to the Bulls, so it wouldn't get any easier. Presuming the Bulls beat Benetton, of course. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm really intrigued to see how it goes on Saturday. We'll finish up with the left wing moment of the week in association with Bank of Ireland. My moment was Tommy O'Brien's tackle on Keenan Prendergast in the corner. Don't know if you saw that. Like, absolutely burst tackle. But unfortunately for Tommy O'Brien, picked up an injury as well. Like, I feel like the guy is like cursed with random soft tissue injuries just when it looks like he's getting a bit of a run of form. But it was a great tackle, dislodged the ball out of Keenan Prendergast's hands. It would have been a funny night for him playing against Sam, his brother, as well. It was a nice photo of them afterwards, kind of just chatting.
It was nice, wasn't it? Yeah. Oh, look, that was magic. And look, at fairness, Tommy O'Brien, he gets stuck in, doesn't he? Like, he looks powerful. Every time I see him, I like him. But as you say, I know the feeling. Having some trouble with injuries, so he needs to get that sorted out, because certainly an exciting talent. My moment of the week was the Craig Casey pickup. I just thought it was magic, and I didn't think he had his probably his best game. I didn't think at times he had some kind of a few messy bits here and there, but that pickup for the try was absolutely magic, wasn't it? I mean, left hand into right and flung a 15-meter pass. It was really, really nice bit of play from, what could have been a messy enough situation. Like, they were on the front foot, but that could easily have been knocked on. That was a really slick pick up and pass. He looked like an international scrum half there to me. But that's my moment of the week. I just thought it was magic. Did you see? You obviously caught that, did you?
Yeah, no, it was very slick with his skill. And just one person I do want to give another shout out to. I know we all went for Antoine Dupont last week for our moment, and I know we cast a bit of kind of doubts on players going into sevens earlier, but for him to come off the Champions Cup final to help France to win the World Series,
unbelievable.
And then to throw an offload for the game-sealing try, like a lovely around-the-corner offload. I was just like, that's some weak 7 days he's had. And obviously,
Did you see the handoff?
Yeah,
Did you see the handoff for the try?
Monster handoff of someone as well. Yeah,
he's a freak. Like, he's an absolute freak.
He's got a good 7 days. And I'm actually not sure I presume he's playing for Toulouse in the top 14, because they look like they can give that. They're top of the table as well. It could be a very successful club season for him. But I did think, just to give him a bit of credit for flying over like Keenan did, but then to be kind of a key man, or one of the key men I think it's France's first ever time winning the overall tournament, which shows the impact he's had. I know he's only played a little bit of rugby.
Did they not win something earlier on in the year?
That was one of the legs, but they won the overall. Like,
oh, they won the overall. That was they won
the overall World Championship. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh man,
yeah,
I just thought they just won the competition.
So like,
no.
Yeah, so they got to the final. They beat Argentina in the final, and he kind of gave the final offload for the final try.
Oh, wow, that's unreal, actually. Sorry, that's even better.
So he won the Champions Cup.
They never won anything, I don't think, had they?
Yeah, won the whole thing. So like, they've actually a good chance of winning a medal as well, which would be, I'm sure, it won't right the wrong of coming up short in the World Cup in 2023, but at least getting a gold medal on home soil probably comes with a nice bonus from Macron as well, I'd say. So
I'd imagine. I did hear. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Was that win their first ever win of the main tournament? Because I know they go have a plate and something else.
That's what I was saying.
The one earlier on the year wasn't it? When he first went over his first tournament.
Yes, France have never won like the overall World Series. I think it was their first ever stage win even.
I think it was their first stage win at the start of the year. The one at the start of the year, sorry, is what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Like, he's so talented, isn't he?
The impact he's made has been absolutely
he's magic. But look, it's good to see, isn't it? Like, I mean, I think I've been pretty harsh on the sevens, and I haven't meant it, because I'm a 15s player, and I would have always been. I always think it's a risk with your 15s career, and that's what you'll be remembered for ideally. And I mean, guys like Serevi and that. Yeah, Serevi's a legend of the game, but he couldn't cut it at 15s, and I just feel like I just worry about guys picking up an injury or something like that over the sevens, and you'd be kicking yourself thinking, oh, I missed the South Africa tour, or I missed a big Six Nations, like Dupont missed the Six Nations. You're kind of going like, can you just give away a Six Nations crown? Like, they would have been competing with Ireland, I think, and if he was playing, I think you'd probably make a good argument for them beating Ireland the opening weekend, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think the fact that we talked about it before, but the fact that it was in France, in Paris, I think is maybe the key clincher. That, like, if the Olympics was in Ireland, say, or not that it would ever be, but like, I could see maybe a few more players wanting to put their hand up and maybe play a home Olympics or something like that. So I can see maybe the lure of that, and as I said earlier, maybe a big kind of check from Emmanuel Macron to get him, maybe to entice him.
So who are we picking for the playoff games? Will it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Is it pretty much all the home teams, or is Stormers a tricky one for
I
Glasgow?
think I'm going to go all 4 home teams. I think Munster, Bulls, Leinster, and I think Glasgow get the job done against Stormers. They're quite good in Scotstoun, and I think it'll set up 2 great semi-finals, Munster, Glasgow, and the one I'm really looking forward to is Bulls, Leinster. I'm hoping to get to watch that in the honeymoon. I'm going to have to carve out some time for that, definitely, if it gets to that stage.
Yeah, I just in terms of my selections, I think I'm going to go with all the home teams as well. I just feel like it's a huge ask. The obvious one that's probably, the trickiest one I think is probably Glasgow Stormers, but like I said, like Ulster and Leinster is a tricky one too. I mean, like there's a potential banana skin there for Leinster, I think. Ulster have a good kicker. They've won against them a couple of times recently. And they're all kind of things that if you're not on your game, if you give away a couple early penalties, you get a little bit nervy. They're missing Keenan. Ringrose back. We're not 100% sure, I don't think.
He's going to be available, but I feel like we've heard these kind of
we've heard it a few times in a row, but we don't know. So, like, look, that is a potential banana skin, but I think Munster and Bulls are absolute certs. I think to go to get the job done. I think
just with Leinster picking their full team, I actually looked this up last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. Like Leinster haven't lost an Interpro with their full team since Stephen's Day in 2018, when Johnny Sexton at Thomond Park kind of lost his head a bit and got in an argy-bargy with Joey Carberry. Like, so when they've picked their full team in Interpro since, they've won maybe 10 in a row or something like that. Obviously, in the semi-final last year, Leo Cullen opted for a different selection and it cost them the game. But when Leinster have their full team, they've been very hard to beat in these Irish derbies. So I expect them to win at the weekend and to set up an unbelievable semi-final in 2 weeks' time. So that's the way I'm going. I'd like to thank Luke for joining me on this week's episode of Left Wing Podcast. We'll be back next week with another show, although I won't be there. I think Rory O'Connor is deputising for me. So until next time, thanks so much for listening and goodbye.